Well, I think we're live. Are we live? Is this thing on? You are back. This is day 2 of the workshop.
Welcome.
Welcome back. If you've come back, welcome back. If you've come back, why have you come back? So today we're going to do a real quick kind of intro to get folks ready for what's about to come. Yesterday, we kind of switched between pre-recorded sessions. And I know Dorothy brought it up in the help desk, like there was a lot of information. And I'll just know that you can grab the recordings. You can watch them at any time. And there was a question about what we're doing in the Discord. It's not going away anytime soon. And we have thought about maybe it being around for a longer term so folks can kind of use it as a community space. But if there's the need, then that will happen. So hopefully today will be a little bit slower pace in that we'll have more time to talk with folks. Coming up after this intro is a great panel with a whole bunch of admins from a variety of places on campus at different schools. So that will be fun. And then after that, we really have kind of targeted sessions where we're talking about very specific things with people on the ground. So look forward to that. But before I go any further, Lauren, why don't you take folks through what we're going to tackle today?
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is just kind of our intro question to get you thinking about the next couple of hours. Think about what we covered yesterday and then also what you want to cover today. If there are any questions that have surfaced over the, since we were last in Discord together, please let us know. We want to make sure that you're walking away from this workshop with something tangible and helpful for Domain of One's Own on your campus. So go ahead, if you've got Discord up, leave just maybe a sentence or two in the sessions channel about what you're hoping to tackle today, what you're still wanting to get out of the workshop. And as Jim said, today is going to be kind of at a different pace. Yesterday was much more technical. We wanted to get all of that content in there, but we could obviously expand that into a full week seminar if we wanted to. So it really is, yesterday felt very compact, which was sort of the point, to make sure you got as much in as we could. Today is obviously much more casual in that it's just open-ended for conversation. So we've built in a lot of flexibility for questions and live kind of communication. So keep that in mind, and we look forward to seeing and addressing those concerns today.
And one note on that, Lauren, just to kind of reinforce what you already said, is if there was a good example where D. Tatum from Trinity had an issue, and it was a very specific issue about email being blocked. And I love that, he brought it up, folks helped him think through it, and he addressed it, and it was solved. I almost think if you have one thing about Domain of One's Own that you want to know, or that's bothering you, or that's been a thorn, use this time to ask about it. And there's enough people on the ground, if not Lauren and I, Tim, Meredith, but folks within the community who might have been there before. Take the time and take advantage of this space to kind of ask that question and try and solve that issue. And if nothing else, you got that out of the way, right?
Exactly. So let us know. We look forward to continuing conversations today. I'm super excited. With that in mind, there is a new addition to Discord that is new from yesterday, and those are the breakout channels under the section called Breakout Discussions. You should see that now, so let me know if you have any issues getting there. These are voice channels, so they are different than the typical typing text channels that you're used to. So when the time comes for our breakout discussions, which are going to happen after this panel, you simply click on the channel that you voted for yesterday, and that's how you join a voice channel. I can see some folks are playing around with that already. Keep in mind that this is audio only, no video. So you don't have to worry about your camera settings before jumping in or anything like that. And by clicking the voice channel, that's how you join. From there, you can actually multitask. So you can be in a voice channel, but then also follow along in other text channels at the same time. So this is nice. We've had some questions about folks that might want to take notes or leave links to things that they're talking about. So feel free to use those channels in general discussions as you are in the voice channels. If you need to leave a voice channel, for whatever reason, Discord kind of hides that, but I have that listed here. There's a little X next to a phone. It's kind of in the bottom left of your Discord screen on the right-hand side there. That's how you would leave a voice channel. So let me know if you feel stuck in any of the channels and we can help you out. But the voice channels, the breakout discussions today are supporting domain of one's own, promoting domain of one's own, archiving and deprovisioning accounts, creating community sites, and then assessment. And we have pinpointed a few participants today to help facilitate those conversations. And after today's panel, we'll be providing some question prompts to get those conversations started. Next, just general housekeeping for the display site, reclaimroadshow.com. That chat embed from yesterday that was sort of out of sync and not updating in real time, that should be fixed now. So if you're still having issues, of course, when in doubt, refresh your page. That's kind of this workshop's motto, I feel like. But if you are having issues beyond that, please do let us know in the help desk section and we will help you out. Also, yesterday's sessions are now recorded and available to reference. So feel free to go back, and those are available immediately to share with your colleagues or just to go back and review if yesterday was fast-paced and you want to just go back and check on things. You can also continue to click the schedules in the top bar here, and that will open up session abstracts with additional documentation. And if you click on some of them, for instance, the show and tell one later today, there is an additional link to help participate. So you can click join us here when the time comes, and that will pull you into a StreamYard link. And we'll talk about that stuff more later on, so don't worry about it so much now, but just wanted to go ahead and point to it that those abstracts can be helpful for additional contributions. So that's pretty much it. We're 7 minutes in. Keep the questions coming, please. I think that's where a lot of the valuable conversations come. We don't want to just talk your ears off with things that aren't important to you. So please lead the conversation today and take it where you want it to go. And we look forward to what today brings.
Yes, I agree. And so with that, I think it makes sense for us to jump right into the panel. As it happens, we found a few people and we figured, hey, you want to be in a panel? Like, we were in the little Scooby-Doo bus. We were driving around, went to a few places, like up to Rochester, down to UNF, over to Georgetown, and then the University of South Carolina. And we picked up all these people, and here they come in the bus, bam. Welcome, all of you, to day one of the Reclaim Roadshow, or day two of the Reclaim, it goes so fast I can't keep up, of the Reclaim Roadshow. I want to thank you all for joining us. We have Blair Tinker from the University of Rochester. Hi, Blair.
Hello.
We have Andy Rush from the University of North Florida. Am I right? I always want to say Northern Florida, but it's North Florida, isn't it?
North.
Yes. Andy, I know you from.
It's like Game of Thrones. We own the North.
Did you ever work at UMW by any chance?
UMW? I'm not familiar.
We
Absolutely.
Amy
class of 1998.
Oh, quiet you. We have Amy Freeman from the University of South Carolina. Amy, thank you for coming. Marie Salvanadin, and I don't know if I got that right, but I hope I did, from Georgetown. Old Gold.
Close enough.
Been here. Thank you. And Lee Scalarup-Bissett from Georgetown. We got two from Georgetown, two for the price of one here. Welcome, Lee. So
hey, everyone.
They have all come, and this session is called Where Do You Live? And the idea here, and it kind of came up in the chat yesterday a bit, about where folks are operating their domain of one's own out of, right? My dog, he operates it out of like the den, living room area. But these folks, it's a question about where do they work from, who do they work with, and how do they manage their stuff? So I'm actually going to hand off this discussion to Andy Rush, who's going to start us, and then we're going to move through in a predefined order that I'll help folks if they forget. So Andy, where do you live?
So yes, the University of North Florida in Jacksonville. We are also known as the First Coast, and I'll talk a little bit about where that fits into domains in terms of websites in a little bit. But so I'm a course media developer in the division called the Center for Instruction and Research Technology, also known as CERT. And we are kind of in an academic technology division, so we're not under, the traditional IT. And also, just of note, I'm part of the class of the 2018 Domains Administration Group that gathered in Fredericksburg. I guess that was the inaugural, or maybe the second version of that particular gathering. So it's nice to be in the van with Jim and all the other people now. So so I started at UNF in 2015. In September of 2015, and I blame or thank Jim Groom because he visited UNF as a member of our UMW DTLT team back in, I think, 2013, and said what a great place UNF was. And so eventually I checked it out and thought it was cool enough to actually move down here. And so as I started here, I always wanted to, and I think the people who wanted to hire me wanted to have the domains program as one of the things that was available, at least to faculty, and that's kind of how it started. One of the first things that we did was purchase a couple of the $100 accounts from Reclaim Hosting. So one was for the CERT organization, and another one eventually was purchased for the Digital Humanities Initiative, which is now, I guess, an institute or more official title. So that was how we kind of dipped our toe in the water of the idea of outside hosting for websites, because we had the traditional Tilde sites. People wanted to transition from those to give more capabilities. I was familiar with WordPress and got into the hosting business, if you will, of being a domain of one's own school. And so I guess the Digital Humanities Initiative started in April of 2017. And then in May of 2017, we purchased the domain of one's own just for faculty. And when we launched that site, or that capability, as a service in September of 2017 to UNF faculty. Just so you get an idea of, so we work in concert with IT in terms of, there's the whole single sign-on stuff, which I had no part of, other than knowing that would be a valuable thing for faculty. They log into a central location to get their email and their Canvas support, all that kind of stuff. Domains was added as another service that was part of single sign-on. And so I work on what's called the creative team in CERT. And so we have a director, Dave Wilson, who is also part of this conference these past 2 days. And also Shelby Scanlon is a kind of her official title is Web Service Specialist. But she does a lot of the stuff and backs me up quite capably, or surpasses me in some cases. In some of the other stuff that I do, which is the video studio. So again, as part of this creative team, we have Dave and we have Shelby, who help me with a lot of things when it comes to domain support. We also have a graphic designer. We also have an academic support technician who does equipment loan out. And then we also have a coordinator of accessibility training. So that's the CERT creative team. And you can kind of put all those pieces together and imagine how they can work together in concert, creating video and audio, but also publishing on the web. So we serve mostly faculty. It started out all faculty, but then we've had some departments and other groups who wanted to have more capable websites, even different schools at the university. So basically adding more capabilities than a Tilde website that can provide. But also more than what our current CMS for our website, our overall UNF website can offer. And we've got probably 180 or so faculty member taking space on our server to varying degrees of usage and that kind of thing. One of the things that you see on the screen now is something that I wanted to highlight, and that's Keith Ashley, who is in the archaeology division. He was recently featured in Smithsonian Magazine regarding some of the kind of early settlements, kind of even before the Spanish arrived in the northern Florida, the first coast area. He's actually on a dig in one of the islands, one of the barrier islands, where they're digging up these long lost settlements, and they're finding just really interesting items. And it's fascinating that one of the links in the article links back to his domain's website. And that was actually put together, with Keith's input, but Mike Boyles helped with the graphic design and kind of the structure of it. So it's nice to have that team approach to the websites. And this is exactly what we wanted to do is highlight people's research or highlight things like book promotions or other types of things that are going on. One of the other things that we recently did was with the virtualization of everything. With COVID in March of 2020, we were basically kicked off campus, but we still had the undergraduate research folks who wanted to do a poster session. So it was, well, how do you do this virtually? So we used a WordPress site, and we used something called Elementor, which is a page building program. And we basically built poster pages. We used a Google spreadsheet because we couldn't figure out in time the self-submission form. But for the 2021 version, that's exactly what we did, we just built a WordPress form with ACF, Advanced Custom Forms, and they submitted their posters, any media and videos that they had, and it would kind of self-build a page that would be their poster with the abstract and that kind of thing. So we've done a lot in the past 4 years. And, it's kind of amazing that we've just kind of let it do its thing. I can't, in all seriousness, I try to bash my former colleague, Jim Groom, whenever I can, but I have to say, in all seriousness, we've had nothing but fantastic support from Reclaim Hosting when it comes to this. And we've been able to do all the things that I've ever wanted to do in terms of at least faculty support with websites. We hope to sometime in the future. It's my dream to include all the students that attend UNF to have their own spaces carved out. And that's something that we're, I guess, actively working on, but there's no date as to when that's going to arrive. But that's where I do live.
Words of wisdom, Floyd. Words of wisdom. So
that's all I can offer.
One of the things, Andy, before I do move on to Blair, is I wanted to say, one of the things that came up, and it was really interesting to hear about the kind of the virtual showcase, is using ACH as a plugin for basically making very quick forms so people could submit, or custom kind of setups, kind of what we've done also, or Tom Woolward did for this site in the headless WordPress. And so that's a theme that comes up a lot, using domain of one's own as a tool amongst many to provide a kind of a richer ecosystem of web-based instructional technology or what have you. And I love that, because I don't think it's the one tool to solve them all like the LMS has been. It's one of many to provide a very kind of focused web-based solution to certain issues faculty and students might have. So thank you, Andy.
Absolutely. Yep.
Big fan. Blair, come on out.
Hey everybody. So there's part
Blair,
of it
welcome.
that you can sort of see part of the dog there. She's an old girl sleeping. She will not be barking, I don't think so.
Yeah, my dog was barking, and luckily he's not down here because he probably knocked me off the chair. So
yeah, she's getting old, so she basically just sleeps on the couch all day.
Awesome. Welcome,
Blair. I'm at University of Rochester. I'm actually the GIS specialist, so not really anything to do with web. I work in digital scholarship. Originally, it was the Multimedia Center, within the library. Start by about 7 years ago. There was a multimedia center, and they actually, would loan out, I guess, they were DVDs at that point, maybe. They also they also had records and laser discs and some other kind of archival stuff. Then it turned into the Digital Humanities Center, and that's when I came in as the GIS specialist to support mapping. And it was primarily at that point faculty and graduate students mostly. And we ran into the same thing, I think, that most people do. If a faculty member came in and they asked for a website, it was kind of onerous for us to do that. We would contact the sysadmin. It was almost always Omeka or WordPress, but we'd have to contact our library sysadmins. They'd have to spin it up, and then there was all the permission stuff. So we were actually turning away a fair amount of faculty that wanted to just test things out, that weren't really serious about projects, and certainly students, unless it was a more rigorous project, we just couldn't really support them. So we got into Reclaim to support those types of projects, really with the intention of it being more of a sandbox, which it hasn't. It actually has turned out to be. We don't really use it like that anymore. We actually have real websites running on it now. Then the Digital Humanities Center became Digital Scholarship Lab, and now we're Digital Scholarship because there's a Humanities Center, and it was just too confusing. And we do a lot of other stuff other than humanities. But we are in the library. We're pretty tightly knit in there. We have, I think, 2 librarians work in our group now. I'm not a librarian, not even close. And we have, several of our other folks in Digital Scholarship are not librarians either, but we do have a humanities librarian, and our new Studio X, head of our Studio X, which is our AR/VR center, is a librarian by training. We work with, it's not called Ed Tech here, it's instructional technology support, I think. We work with them a little bit, but we're actually quite separate. We kind of do our own thing. They work a lot with, software and hardware for classrooms and faculty, and we kind of do more of the research support. We use Reclaim a lot for students. Originally we were thinking mostly faculty and graduate students, but we do a lot with undergrads now. So I think the last couple of years it's been interesting. We have a digital media studies program, which is fairly new, but they all have to do a capstone in their 4th year, and almost all of them use Reclaim for their capstone projects. And we use that, multiple users sharing the same account, because they're groups of 4 to 6, and we actually just kind of send them right to the login. We don't actually add their accounts in there and have them share it. They just share their FTP username and password, and that seems to work well for them. So we have a lot of those. Other digital media studies students, there's a portfolio class. Not all of them, some of them use Wix or other things because they get to choose, but a lot of them use Reclaim. Some of them even kind of hand coding HTML sites. And then we do have faculty, some faculty projects that I'll pop in the chat afterwards, just a couple examples that use Reclaim, but then we'll buy a domain name. Usually through Reclaim, we recommend that because it's super easy and quick and cheap. So we have a couple, larger faculty projects that are using the service as well. So we kind of support all those different things. I do all the technical support myself, but it's not much. And I'm curious to see what others have here. I mean, it's generally, we do the setups, we give them kind of the cPanel intro basics, click here to do this, click here to do that. And then, there's so much WordPress and Omeka. Almost all of our sites are WordPress and Omeka. There's so many materials out there for people that we just kind of let them do their own, and they usually do pretty well. we get the weird situations where things go wrong, and I stumble through the docs for a while and then yell for help, and then usually get squared away. So overall, it's just me doing the support on our domains I want to own, and I maybe 5% of my time, or maybe 10% at the most, would be supporting. And then others in our group, will visit classes and kind of show people real quick how to use it. But, it's not that hard to get into a cPanel and click install WordPress and do that.
So Blair, is it in some ways similar to what Andy was describing, in that, it's another service amongst many, depending upon what a department or a class or a student or a faculty might need. So it stands aside many other tools you might have.
Yeah, exactly. And we have a developer that writes, custom apps and whatever, and he uses Reclaim Cloud for hosting some of the programs he's writing. But he doesn't really use domain of one's own. That's all like super custom stuff. And we have a digitization specialist, and she doesn't do anything with it. So it is really just kind of one thing in the toolbox. We don't. U of R doesn't even offer like a tilde website for people. So there is a pretty big gap. And the other gap that we continue to have is there's nobody that will help people make a website. Like, we kind of do that, but we tell people we don't do that, but we end up having to do that anyways. None of us are web designers or graphic art. We don't have any of that. And we just don't have the time to do that. But our ed tech doesn't really do that either. And our web services team doesn't do that either. So that's one thing we are struggling with, is people are like, all right, great, I have a WordPress site. It's not that hard to make pages and stuff, but who can help me make a really nice, effective WordPress site? And we're like, Google. That's kind of, unfortunately, our answer.
No, it's a good point. And one of the things actually that you brought up that I think is interesting and might be worth a whole other, I would love to have a conference around just this, like the history and archaeology of different programs. Like what you were describing as you started was like a media program where you would rent out DVDs, and this is where you come for the vinyl, but a lot of that we know went online. And yet the library is still this very interesting hub for ed tech groups, for digital humanities groups, for you name it. And I really am interested, and one of the reasons we wanted to ask this question is, based on where you live will define what people expect from you, right? And designing a site is interesting because we have a lot of people who come to Reclaim and like, look, we're getting rid of our tilde spaces. And so we want to give folks a self-service, something like domain of one's own. So in some ways it's considered next generation. In fact, Andy and I were joking before this session that in that same Smithsonian article, there's a link to the professor's tilde space and then a link to his kind of WordPress. And it's almost like an archaeology of like websites. And that's a really interesting question. Like, you provide the service, but to what degree do you support the development of a website, the thinking through what a digital identity is, how do you present yourself online, all those other kind of unspoken expectations of when you build out. It's super interesting.
And we did not plan on, and that's the thing, originally we were very narrowly focused, and that's why we called it Digital Scholar, which in retrospect is way too long of a name. For a domain, but we really wanted to focus on scholarship, not on personal websites, not even at that time like digital portfolios. We were really thinking about scholarship, but as the university didn't really have any other easy options for that. And we were like, we didn't want to use up all our 500 accounts or all our storage space. So we were really being very conservative. And now we're expanding it. So now we have some lab websites where, there's a psychology lab, and they're like, well, the university will give us a WordPress, but no plugins because of all the security stuff. So we're filling a niche we didn't expect to fill, which brings up new kind of support, mostly design, how to best practices and how to design, which we can't fulfill, but people, since we offer the service, expect you to fulfill that. So that's the only kind of thing where I think we kind of rub up against some limitations there.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I mean, it will be, for me, it's been super interesting just as a look inside at Reclaim over the last, I would say 2 years. by and large, we have been approached by libraries, academic research, like that are doing both educational technology, but as well as more kind of frameworks for giving folks hosting, right? Like NYU calls their domain of one's own just hosting.nyu.edu. And I really love that because it's just like, this is a hosting service for all the things you maybe can't get elsewhere on campus. And it kind of starts to divide that, but then there's that fine line of it's hosting, but it's not like you support 100 different applications you could install, or, so it really represents, where you have to draw a line where your group is comfortable supporting, and how do you make that clear up front so that you're not kind of barraged with, well, we have a site, but now I don't know how to work plugins, or I'm not sure how to design this, or what theme do I use? It can be a slippery slope, right?
Yeah, it definitely can. And that's, we've kind of been, easing into that. Again, we originally, if a department came to us, we'd say, no, you can't build a department website here. You've got to go to the university. But then we're like, well, why are we making that distinction? As long as we're upfront with saying we can help you with technical stuff, but, the design's on your own. And most people understand that, and they're okay with that. I think being in the library, even more so sometimes than ed tech, people expect, the library is very central, and people expect to come in. They expect lots of different services. I worked at UVA for, 5 years in the library, and then, now at U of R, 5-6 years. And I really love being in the library because it is central. It's kind of neutral ground to a certain extent. Less intimidating than an IT center. Sometimes, sometimes people are hesitant to go into an IT center and ask for help with things. So, I think that's, where the library can be kind of a special place for an offering like this. That's a little, lowers the bar, lowers the pressure and the expectations a little bit.
I'm telling you, you're writing my segue for me to the next discussant. So thank you. I did want to, before we do speak with Amy, I wanted to say, really interesting you bringing up add-on domains. And that's something that folks can do, right? They may have only subdomains, but any person can add a domain they buy at any registrar. And that site becomes a full-fledged, has its own home on the web. Really, the idea is just pointing that domain to that service. And that's an underutilized feature. So I love that you brought it up. Thanks again, Blair, for joining us and sharing your wisdom. Amy, I said library and you appeared.
Indeed, like magic again. So it really was a good segue because as we were finishing up there, I thought, these are a lot of the same things that I'm going to talk about. So
I was trying to get him off. I was like, come on, Blair, come on.
It's all good. It's all good. But yeah, so I'm Amy Freeman. I'm the scholarly communication librarian at the University of South Carolina, and I am with the library. So I'll talk just a little bit about how domains works at our institution. And for us, it lives in the Digital Research Services department of our library. So probably not terribly dissimilar from digital scholarship or digital humanities and all that stuff that Blair was just talking about, in that it's a very central location for us. We're actually a pretty new group. We didn't even come together as a department until 2019. And that came about when we did a needs assessment across campus, and we discovered that a lot of people were doing really cool, interesting digital research, but it was difficult for them because a lot of times they didn't have access to building websites, they didn't have the tools that they needed. If they were aware of some tools, they maybe didn't have access to them because, this and this department offered it, but you're not allowed to use it if you're in this department, or maybe you're only allowed to use it if you are a faculty member, but not a graduate student. And so we kind of found that we really needed a good, central, accessible space for supporting things like scholarly communication and digital scholarship. And so made a lot of sense to us that that should be in the library. Our library is right in the middle of campus. We say the heart of the campus, and we mean that literally and figuratively. And I think a lot of us who are working there already either had the skills to make this happen or were willing to learn the skills to make that happen. So a few of us were tasked up with building services like, digital publishing, digital humanities, data support, open educational resources. And with 3 people of varying experience levels, we really kind of realized quickly that we needed a way to build infrastructure and support and offer all those services that we wanted to offer as kind of quickly as possible. We really wanted to hit the ground running and build up momentum for this new department. And so when we stumbled across Domain of One's Own, it was kind of like a little moment. We were really excited because we thought this was maybe the solution that could help us build the foundation for a lot of the services that we wanted to offer. So here at USC, we branded it Create Digital, U of SC Create Digital, and I think we keep it pretty loosely defined. We say it is for hosting for digital research and scholarship projects. And we did intentionally keep this super vague and open to interpretation. Anybody who is a USC Columbia graduate student, faculty member, or staff member can get an account as long as they sign up through that form, and we verify that their use isn't something totally off the wall. And I've seen it used in a whole lot of ways that, like everybody else, kind of became a little bit unexpected. So one of my jobs is to support open educational resources. And so it's really great when somebody comes to me and says, I am interested in building an OER and I don't know where to put it, or I don't know where to get started. And I think, oh, okay, so there's lots of places this could go. But have you considered, getting this Create Digital account? And so we have some cool OER that live on Create Digital. We have things like course websites for a woman who was working with 3D skeletal visualizations, which was really cool. Oral histories and virtual tours. We have, collections of student research. And actually, why don't I go ahead and maybe just show a couple of examples here. So this one right here, Van Gogh's Left Ear and Final Eye, this came about as part of a project that was done by museum science students. So they were taking a class on digital exhibits. And you probably need a way to actually create digital exhibits if you are offering a course on that. And previously that didn't exist. So they came to us and said, help. And we said, sure, no problem. Use Create Digital for this. And this is just one example of one of those projects. This is a really interesting website that was done by one of our criminal justice faculty members. He does a 3D virtual tour of the criminal justice system, sort of as a way to help his students build empathy and really, experience the criminal justice system from the inside. So it's actually it's a little hard to go through sometimes, but it is a really unique site. This is one where somehow I convinced some folks to use Scalar, and they built this Introduction to Cumberland Island. It was an honors college class, and all of the different students were working on it. They went down to Cumberland Island, which is a really unique historical island off of the coast of South Carolina. And they did oral histories with long-standing residents. They toured and made digital tours of all of the historical and the natural features. And so this is a really cool way. Oh, that's not good. I don't know what happened here. There it goes. A kind of unique way to offer that group digital project through the class. Our McKissick Museum, our cultural heritage institution, uses it to create their digital exhibits. This is a grant-funded project on social justice graphic novels, and it comes with all sorts of curriculum, resources for educators, librarians to use. And then our College of Arts and Science actually did a whole theme semester on justice. And this was a way that they could showcase what is going on. We'll have to look into that one. Oh dear. We were having some of these problems the other day. But anyways, there were several classes that had students who created projects that were associated with this theme of justice. And so they pulled them all together in this website. So that's just a few of those examples that have come out of Create Digital. And so the really nice thing for us is that it was a huge segue into the other services that we wanted to offer as a library, the ways that we wanted to help students and faculty. So yes, we do provide our folks with, cPanels, domains, all that good stuff. But I think one of our big roles is to actually give, trainings, help people select the different platforms and the tools that they'll use, build out tutorials and resources, help people, write letters and support their grant projects. I do see sometimes people will, just sign up, but more often they come to us with an idea, or they'll come to a workshop and they will, we'll help them get started. So in terms of support, a lot like Blair, we try really hard to be hands-off once people get started with their project, unless it's something that we have, kind of intended to be collaborative with us. We help with basic troubleshooting. Really, that doesn't happen a lot, but we don't do things like site building, working with databases. We kind of we give them the tools to make it happen. And generally, it's their own domain. So they make that happen. Right now, I am the only administrator for domains. This was pretty intimidating to me initially, my title, Scholarly Communication Librarian. I remember walking around at the Domains Conference in 2019 in Raleigh. If you were there, you probably remember penguins and those bathrooms that had those see-through walls. But anyway, I was walking around and seeing what everybody else was doing. And we hadn't officially signed up yet. And I thought, ooh, am I sure this is my job? Is this something that I actually have the technical skills to do? And do I have the time? And really, probably the answer was no. But that hasn't slowed us down. We figured it out as we've gone, and it's not been too difficult, I think, to sort of learn as we go. Generally, I will learn how to do something by saying, "Oh, I'm going to teach a class on that," and then you figure it out. And it's just been a really fantastic service for us in the library, and we've had nothing but great experiences with Reclaim in terms of helping set us up for success here. So, if you have questions about working with domains in a library, I'm always happy to chat on Discord or just reach out. So yeah, that's how we do it in the library.
I know, I love that. And it was really, I hope you do share some of those URLs, because those examples, like the virtual tour inside prison and the Cumberland Island, and a bunch of folks were talking in the chat about Scalar. And I love to see some good Scalar examples. So, I mean, all of these, also the social justice graphic novel, like so many good examples. And I will look into why you're getting internal server errors. I think it might be plugin resource related, but I had to stop myself from jumping into support mode.
I understand. Yeah, and I'll totally share out some of those links.
No, but it's really, I also really love the fact that you're focusing on OER, which is something that came up before the conference with a bunch of folks. But the fact that you're thinking this is a platform to share those resources is gigantic. So thank you for those great examples, Anna. And now we have Marie and Lee from Georgetown to talk to us about living in candles and setting the light, illuminating the path with domain. And you like that? Was that slick?
Love it.
Welcome, both of you.
Thank you. So we are, as Jim just said, we are housed in Candles, which stands for Center for New Designs and Learning and Scholarship, hence the amazing acronym CANDLES. So we are primarily the teaching and learning center on campus. That said, we do a lot more than only sort of that quote unquote bucket. So I'll just sort of list out a bunch of things so you can kind of get a scale of the kinds of work that the center does on campus. Faculty development around technology, diversity, equity, and inclusion, digital learning, applied innovation, online program development, assessment and analytics, research around teaching and learning. So we're a pretty big group for a teaching and learning center. I think we're about like 35 people. That said, the number of programs and projects that we support are somewhere in the hundreds. Domains is housed within our center, which is a central unit, and we support faculty across campus. So there are sort of different kind of agreements with the law center, for example, but for the most part, across campus. So we started Domains, I want to say September 2015, and kind of very much, it's sort of emerged from the WordPress multi-site instance that we still have, we currently have, which has been around for like 14 years. I think UMW Jim and us were sort of doing this together in some way. So a lot of learning from that. And then in parallel, we have a development team, a media team in the center. So both those teams, and actually a couple of our developers are here at the conference as well. So as part of that work, we partner with faculty to build applications that they plan to use in their courses. So we were sort of just seeing a pattern of needing to set up different kinds of applications on our sort of, at that point, hosted by internal ID. So instead of being able to focus on some of the core skill sets, right, like the pedagogy, the design, the development pieces, we ended up doing a lot of stuff on the infrastructure side. So, Domains was coming up at the perfect time, and, Jim and Candles, we had a very good relationship. So we just sort of figured, like, let's do this, give some more flexibility to our audience, faculty and students and staff, and just focus on where we can talk about digital presence, identity, privacy, data ownership, etc. So that's how we kind of started. Now, what this has allowed us to do is build partnerships across campus. So we have a pretty strong partnership with our IT department, who played a key role in actually helping with the single sign-on, for example, who always sort of step in when we need, different kind of technical stuff. Something coming up soon, DNS Cascade, for example, those kinds of roles. And we also partner with them very closely because they still have a centrally managed WordPress install where they prefer that departments and programs host their sites. But then by partnering with them, we're able to sort of bring the traffic of faculty sites, research, student projects, digital assignments towards Candles, so we can help have the teaching and learning, the pedagogical conversations, and use Domains as a vehicle to have that conversation. So one example, I'll sort of talk about a couple of institutional level examples, and we'll share the links on Discord. So the instructional continuity website that Georgetown worked on, basically our center worked on, is hosted on Domains, but it's a very big key resource for all of campus. But everyone sort of is able to collaborate very easily because there's not sort of limitations around what the template can do, who's owning the content, that kind of thing. It really helps with partnering with different groups. And a second example I wanted to share is the Slavery Archive project, which came from the Slavery Memory and Reconciliation Working Group, and that is an Omeka site. Again, on that project, we partnered with the library, so research librarians, history scholars, and folks from Candles, collaboratively working in a space. Again, sort of technology not being a barrier to the creative process, to the brainstorming, instead sort of allowing this work to happen and not always rely on, well, you have to copy so-and-so and only so-and-so can upload this or that. So those kinds of things just makes it much easier. And part of our strategy is working with programs and faculty pretty directly to spread the word. So I'll turn it over to Lee to talk about that part of our approach.
Hey, everyone. With zero time left, you hand it over last to the person who probably will talk the most. So I am currently, I am the assistant director. It's a new title and a new position for me. I'm the assistant director for digital learning at Candles. Previous to that, I was brought in as a learning design specialist. And I was previously at the University of Mary Washington working at DTLT in their, excuse me, with their domains project. I shared some links of some of the work that we did trying to preserve the history of domain of one's own and seeing how it grew and all of that. And so what I was brought in part because of my expertise in digital humanities. Partially, I'm trying to follow the chat at the same time, which I should not be trying to do. Partially because of my experience with domain of one's own, but also because of my experience with digital humanities, with traditional faculty development, educational technology, and online learning. All things that our center does, but can often happen in very siloed kind of ways, as you can imagine. And having been to those conferences, you may know how siloed those things may be. The faculty developers have their own conference, the online learning people have their conference, the ed tech have their conference. And so it was really an opportunity for me to bring people and places into conversation and to focus on the pedagogical side of domain of one's own. And so we work with programs, again, across the university, both in person and online programs. And so one of the big programs that we work with, and not only undergraduates, I'm going to talk a little bit about graduate programs that we work very closely with. Some of you may know of the Learning Design and Technology Masters that was recently started at Georgetown University. It's a part of the graduate school there, and largely taught by Candle's staff members. So I happen to teach a studio design course using domain of one's own, specifically targeted for students creating their final portfolios. It's not a thesis-based master, it's a portfolio-based master's. And so I help walk them through the process of not just creating on WordPress, but thinking through all of these questions of content, of presentation, of digital identity. As I like to say, we don't even get into domains and we don't even get into WordPress until halfway through the course in terms of thinking about that. So that's proven to be really successful and a lot of fun to teach. I really enjoy teaching it. It is like the merging of couple of my favorite, most nerdy things: digital identity, creativity, and domain of one's own and WordPress. Another graduate program, and this particularly came about as this program, PRCC, which is Public Relations and Corporate Communications. I always forget what the CC stands for. It's Public Relations and Corporate Communications. They are a longstanding continuing education. That's a different school of continuing ed. It's a school of continuing ed program that has recently began transitioning a lot of their courses online. And through their work with us and transitioning their courses online, we have started to incorporate domain of one's own and the Commons blog for a lot of their class projects and assignments, which makes perfect sense for a program like that. But again, sometimes the School of Continuing Studies, they have their own instructional designers. They have their own sort of spaces. They aren't even sort of co-located on campus in a lot of cases. They're moved downtown. So this was an opportunity to bring them into Candles and to have conversations around these things and to introduce domain of one's own to them. And so now there's a public relations course that has students using the Commons blog in order to write about pet causes that they all choose to do their project on and apply what they're learning to be able to talk about that, but also engage with students who don't have the same values as they do, who have different interests, and having conversations around how do we target the public, right? And different publics and be able to address them. And so the Commons blog has worked fantastically for that. I'm working on another course right now around digital marketing, where we're going to be using domains for A/B testing. So students will have access to a domain that the faculty member, or a site that the faculty member created, where they will do changes to it in order to be able to do A/B testing and understand how Google Analytics and Google, different Google things work, which they need to know in public relations on the back end of those things. So again, these are sort of very different kinds of applications. And again, we do a lot of research use it as a research platform. We also collaborate. There's a digital humanities librarian and a digital scholars librarian at the library that we collaborate with frequently. I've collaborated and done Omeka installations with our faculty in Qatar. So really, like when we say, like, we're a big team, but we're serving a really big global campus. And it's really exciting to be able to work with domains and commons blogs with, people around the world, literally.
It's interesting too, both Marie and Lee, because it is of a piece. Marie, you were referencing, like, this has been a long-standing relationship when we were working through WordPress multi-site. UNW and Georgetown were thinking through that. I think I saw Eddie Maloney talk about portfolios using WordPress in 2005, maybe, and like Brian Alexander and him and Dan Cohen were on a panel at GMU at the CH&M, and what was CH&M. And so it's interesting to hear both of you talk about that long story of what we're doing. And Leah, I love to hear the fact that you're on the ground actually doing some of the stuff that Blair said is a hard thing to fit, right? It's hard to get people to think of, we have the tool. Now, what does that mean about design? What does that mean about architecture? What does that mean about identity? And so I really love the fact that Candles keeps on pushing out, and that this has been a useful tool for what is an amazing master's program. I really like, on the outside looking in, seeing the work you've done. It's really cool.
If I'm going to make a plug for it, because this is why Marie said we should talk about this, but I think, like, we have, I'm seriously blown away every year by how brilliant our graduate students are in this program. They are going to go off and do such marvelous things. So if you were looking for instructional designers or academic technologists, let us know, because we have brilliant graduates who would love to work for you. And if you have brilliant students who are interested in these kinds of things, I'll pop the link, but it's just basically ldt.georgetown.edu. And you can see the program. I saw that you shared some of the portfolios that the students have done. I can share some of those as well. Very much focused on social justice. The whole university, Georgetown, is, but our program as well, very much focused on questions of accessibility, questions of design, thinking critically about technology. It is just, it's a fantastic international group of students, and they are all brilliant, and they all bring such a wonderful thoughtfulness. And I'm lucky I teach the portfolio class, because I'm teaching them how to do things, because I get to see all of their wonderful projects and learn from them and all of the fantastic work that they do and are going to keep doing moving forward.
Well, it's wonderful. So thank you. And it's a unique graduate program in that it's bringing together all of these different disciplines and allowing for a kind of integrative thought around what ed tech will be. And so it doesn't hurt that you have futurists like Brian Alexander, and it's a fun program. So good for all you, for all the work you do. Now, the idea was to maybe take questions, but I do think we're running, and Lauren got a question. So for people working in libraries, do you also have digital commons, and how does it cross over with domain of one's own? We get questions about, when do I use domain of one's own and when do I use digital commons? Do I need both? I didn't need to read it to you, but I did. Anyone want to take this?
I take that one, and I actually put a little bit in the chat too. So I also our institutional repository manager, and we use digital commons. So this is indeed a question that I also get a lot. And they have very different purposes. So the institutional repository, I think, is for very stationary, fixed content. Not always the case, but projects that have been completed, research that needs to be archived, data sets that needs to be shared, those types of things. So if there's going to be very little hands-on interaction from the point that it's posted, generally I'll say, put it in the repository. We'll make a permalink for it, make sure that everybody can access it forever and ever, or until something happens to the Great Wide Web. Whereas if something is a little bit more flexible, stationary, you're going to continue to work on it, make improvements. It's more of a living website, that's something that would go towards domains instead.
Yeah.
Me and Lauren often are producing simultaneously. But I do want to say, I want to be mindful of time, because we do want to prepare folks for the voice channels. So there is much more to discuss. Please use Discord to take that discussion with our unbelievable guests, hosts, Blair, Amy, Lee, Marie, and Andy. Thank you all for joining us on this Where Do You Live episode. And we hope to hear more in the chat from you. Now, Lauren, what are we up for next? What's coming?
I'm glad you asked, Jim. Let me go ahead and share my screen and tell you. I'm producing on the fly here, so this is good. Okay, so up next, we've got our breakout discussions. So I'm going to put these visuals in the sessions channel. We've got about 5 minutes for you to, grab a quick cup of coffee or do whatever you need to do, and then hop out into the breakout discussions into the channel that you hopefully voted for yesterday to try and keep our numbers consistent. And here are some conversation starters. So we've got some channel facilitators that are going to be in there leading the conversations, but these are really just to get you started. Don't feel like you have to let the conversation carry you through these 5 questions, but obviously if you want guidance for getting started, what are you doing currently? What has worked? Why? What hasn't worked? Why? And if you have any goals for the future, what are they? What will it take to get there? And how can Reclaim Hosting best support you in those endeavors? Those might be some just general conversation starters. And then, of course, if you're interested in taking notes or want to leave a to-do list for Reclaim Hosting or whatever, leave those comments in the text general discussions section as well. So I won't talk your ear off anymore. Please go forth, and Jim and I will be floating through the various voice channels, and we'll see you there. Thank you, everyone.